I think Apple's biggest hurdle is to get people to actually use Siri for anything again, who aren't following this and aren't in the minutiae of the daily tech news, to get people to actually try Siri again. People who are sick of hearing, here's what I found on the web, or every 4 seconds. I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle. Like getting people to use Apple Maps again, right? After that first initial launch, the well was tainted for a lot of people. And that's still how people...
That's crazy because that was 11 years ago, right?
If you ask, say, 10 people what their opinions are on Apple Maps, I don't want to speculate the number of people. There will be a few in there I will say, not sure. It's garbage. It's crap. And Apple Maps has gotten really good. I'm curious to what that uptick is going to be with Siri.
Jon, we've got some big news this week.
I mean, arguably the biggest news, I would say.
The biggest news, yes. Well,
the biggest news.
I didn't want to start with the biggest news, but we do have some big news. But we might as well, you already brought it up, the biggest news.
Biggest.
Perhaps in the history of the show. We have finally nailed down what I would consider to be potentially the biggest guest we've ever had.
I don't think there's any potentially about it.
Do you know how difficult it was to make this? By the way, this is episode 200. This is episode 200 of the show.
We made it. I do, because it was mostly my fault. How difficult it was to make this episode. I went and had surgery and got pneumonia in between us trying to book, I think, the best guest we've ever had on the show.
Well, it's time to reveal what we've done for episode 200 here of Geared Up. Despite Jon's many health atrocities throughout the past couple of months, we've made this happen. Lexy Savvides of CNET, how are you doing?
Hi guys, it's such a pleasure to be here with you two. I feel like that I do not deserve that introduction. It's going to be so anticlimactic now you're giving me this huge introduction.
Absolutely not.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, and I'm glad that Jon's feeling better and all stitched up and ready to go.
I'm ready.
Good.
I have a quick question just about the process so I know my process. I pretty much know Jon's process for making video content. You also make video content, but for CNET, I just want to know how that works. Like, do you come into work and are you just given, here's what we're talking about today, or you have input about what you're making? How does it work on your side of things?
It's pretty much all me, baby. I come with my ideas, my pictures, anything that I want to cover. If companies come to me and offer review units of things, then I do those videos. It is really very self-directed. I'm super lucky. I've got an amazing team behind me, obviously, with amazing producers and videographers and things like that. But when it comes to what video do I want to work on today, 99% of the time, it's me going, this is a video I want to make. And sometimes people might be like, why do you want to make that video? Is that a good idea? And I'm like, I think it's going to work. I hope it's going to work. And most of the time it does. So super lucky in that respect.
And I assume you, much like us, the reason that you want to make a video is based on like what you're feeling that day, what you're passionate about that day, what you're interested in, and not just, it's got to make something for work.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really lucky. Like, I get to cover a whole breadth of consumer tech, whether that's like mobile devices, wearables, audio. And then I also cover like this entirely other realm of very tech related, but not exactly like consumer facing stuff. So thinking about assistive robotics, exoskeletons, really cool like AI tech that's not necessarily going to be something that you can buy, but it can potentially really have a great impact on your life for hopefully better, but maybe potentially sometimes for worse. But it's really about finding those stories that I'm just a real geek at heart. I have been ever since I was like 5 years old. Got my first PC. I don't want to date myself, but it was DOS and I was playing Blockout. And my parents had to kind of take it away from me because I was like so addicted to it. So really been just trying to find like the things that I'm passionate about and people who hopefully are watching are also really passionate about, and telling those stories and just sharing those experiences specifically around cool tech. It's kind of like, it's why you guys do your job, right? As well, because it's just, you're sharing those stories, you're sharing those experiences, and it's just getting that really amazing stuff in front of people's eyes to create great videos. And
you've been making videos for a long time, kind of like all of us. What is one video that stands out as like, I can't believe I get to do this for a job moment? Like what was that for you?
Oh my gosh, so many. There was one in particular when I went to Salt Lake City, and there's this company called Sarcos Robotics. And they were focusing on making kind of like really big exoskeletons, like thinking about stuff like kind of almost from Transformers. It was really to do with helping basically improve mobility and reduce exertion and reduce injury for people who are working in really kind of like high risk environments. Think people like baggage handlers on airlines and people who are doing a lot of repetitive industrial work. And it was just the most incredible experience seeing this like really kind of Transformers like machine kind of coming towards me with a person at the helm. I also got to like try basically lifting. It was like 30 pounds of weight, and it felt like a feather when I lifted it to try and sort of feel the effect of that. I kind of had to have a pinch myself moment going, I'm kind of living in the future, like I'm seeing the future before it almost happens. And that was just an incredible experience. I love finding those stories.
Before we jump into the news, I have a question for the both of you. It's a very simple question. What I thought was a simple question. I put this out on Threads. I'm just like, let me just ask it. Sometimes you're just on Threads. Like, sure. Just ask a question, right? Throw a question out there.
Okay.
This became, I believe, my most popular thing I've ever posted on Threads. It's my phone keeps blowing up with comments. I didn't realize this was so controversial, but I want to hear from you. When you send a message to someone in messages, in whatever, iPhone, Android, whatever it might be.
Sure.
At the bottom, when it tells you if someone looked at your messages or not, that little line, what do you call some sort of receipt? What do you call it?
I call it a red receipt.
So do I.
I'm going to have to. So.
And oh no, that was the wrong answer, wasn't it?
Interesting.
I've only
ever referred to it as a read receipt. And I've only ever heard it referred to as a read receipt until about like 3 days ago when someone said red receipt. And I was like, wait, what did you say?
I think we're potato here, Andrew. That was your biggest.
Fine.
Yeah.
That was your biggest thread you've ever had?
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
More about you than the comment.
Well, I just put it out there. I'm not the one who. There are people fighting. I mean, literally flaming each other in the comments about this. They're giving all sorts of different examples for different types of receipts that exist in the world and how you refer to them.
I think I've probably called it both, in all fairness. Read and read receipts.
Okay, but read receipts. Okay. I just wanted to ask. I wanted to get it out of the way. I wanted to ask a couple of professionals. I don't know if I can trust the commenters on Threads.
That's a good question. I mean, my thinking is it's past tense. Like, I've read it. It's in the past. That's why I would call it a red receipt. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to be this is the devil's advocate logical version, but I'm also Australian and I say words very differently from a lot of people in the rest of the world. And I get a lot of flames and comments because I'm like, wow, you said aluminium instead of aluminum. So I always say it twice in different ways in my videos.
Scorpions. All right. I mean, I will just say, like, listen, when I go shopping, I get a shopping receipt, not a shopped receipt. That was my only.
That's a good point. Okay. I'm with you on that one.
No one cares about this but me, so let's just move on. The big news of the day, it seems like, is this morning, Apple released the first developer beta that includes Apple Intelligence features. So we have iOS 18.1, iPadOS 18.1, and macOS Sequoia 15.1, all in beta, simultaneously with the non-0.1 versions. So you can choose, if you're a developer, do you want to stick to the 0.0 betas or do you want to try Apple Intelligence starting today, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I've installed it on a few devices here and I haven't really had time to play with it. But I was curious if you guys saw the news, what you guys think. I know, John, we talked about AI last week and you said your eyes just glaze over when you hear AI. You don't really care.
I care to some extent.
So let's talk about it. What did you think when you saw 18.1 was released? Do you have a developer account? Are you going to try this out?
Yes, so I obviously have a developer account. I've got it. I don't have 18.1 yet installed on a test device. First of all, it's crazy we're getting betas of 18.1 before, while we're still in the midst of 18. I think Apple is notoriously slow to the market, right? But when they come into a market, usually it's a full-featured suite of products. I think what I'm numb to isn't AI; it's just the ad nauseum use of the term AI and how it gets thrown around into everything. We're looking to buy a toaster, and the toaster was advertised as having AI built in. Like, just heat my bread. But I do think what Apple's doing is interesting, and I think if Apple can nail app contextual awareness, and if Apple can make AI useful without thought, I think that's where we'll see a difference. Not thinking about how the AI is being used. I'm not going to go in and generate a bunch of emoji all the time. I'm not going to use create images all the time. But if I know that my pictures suddenly look much better, if I can ask Siri to find things in emails and apps and in text, that's incredibly useful. And I think when you see the actual use case for Apple Intelligence and how it's going to, I assume, meld into the whole iOS experience when it finally gets fully released, I think it's actually going to be very useful and very exciting. And it's the similar reason I'm excited about Gemini as well. I think Google's sort of building towards a similar thing there.
Yeah, I would agree with John. I mean, I think the approach that Apple's taking is really interesting with this kind of rollout of AI features. And I'm very much like you, John. Like, you keep talking about AI and I kind of like start to switch off, number of times that we've heard it kind of ad nauseum this year. But the way, obviously there are some features that are not going to be available immediately at launch, like in this developer beta now. And I think the way it's being rolled out is intriguing because we're going to see those natural language features and those kind of like contextual conversations be part of that initial rollout. And I think that's probably kind of the real cornerstone of where we're going to see people either really adopting this and kind of getting really interested in it and seeing how useful it is, as opposed to kind of like those sort of the generative kind of, oh, cool, like I can make my emojis, I can make my, my image playground tools, that it's kind of nice, but is that something that we have used all the time? If you look at like how Samsung and Galaxy AI tools kind of have rolled out in that way, like there was a lot of fanfare about, oh, look at all these like generative AI tools and making all this stuff. And then I used them probably once or twice, and then I've never touched them again. So I think it's clever that Apple is doing it in a more staggered approach with the developer betas. Obviously, what happens with the final release is another question. But yeah, I definitely think that this is probably the better approach to kind of give that slow, steady rollout and see.
It's interesting the way that you guys phrase that, because I do agree. Like the whiz bang features that they try to show off for AI, it's like they get you excited about it, almost like a movie trailer. Wait, you'd be so excited to get this in your hands and try it out. Then you try it out and you're like, oh, okay, that was But I don't know that I'm ever going to use my S Pen to just draw doodled AI artwork ever again. I don't know that I'm going to write an email to a family member or a brand or whoever and have AI make it sound professional. Like, I'll try it because it's interesting to try, but I don't know that I ever hit the send button on those results. And I was thinking about it this morning. I'm almost more excited about the features that I feel come across as boring. Like one example would be in your email inbox, right? You can set it to where you can show like one line of the email or 3 lines of the email just as a little preview. Yeah. I've always felt that that area of the email is the most useless. Dear Andrew, I hope this email finds you well today. How's the weather going in Seattle? Seeing that as a preview is useless to me. But now with Apple Intelligence, you can, instead of having that, opt for an AI generated summary of the email to just appear there. That sounds way more useful to me, but it's just a summary of your email. So it's not something that I think most people are like, oh, that's so exciting. But it makes email so much more usable. And it's something that I'm in, and I assume most people are in every day, your email, right? Yeah. Making my inbox more usable sounds fantastic to me, but it doesn't sound like the kind of feature that will get people excited about AI.
But that kind of feature is also locking people into Apple's sort of more ecosystem, right? You have to use the official mail. I don't use a mail app.
That's true.
Am I going to be forced, or users going to not be forced, but to get a full experience, you have to go all first-party apps?
So I do know that, the semantic index, which is the profile that it kind of builds of you on your device. And by the way, that's on a per device basis. So each device will have its own. It's not one thing that syncs between them, which I kind of think is unfortunate. Apps will be able to contribute to that. But things like Mail, I don't know that Google, for example, will be able to add Apple Intelligence features to the Gmail app. I think it's in reverse. Google can make your email in Gmail accessible to the semantic index if it chooses to do so. So that is a good point. Like a lot of features that you're going to see in Apple Intelligence, for example, another one is the ability to create a memory in Photos. So you can just go into Photos,
Yep.
and it'll give you different suggestions for memories it can create, or you can just say with natural language, make me a slideshow of the trip we took to Italy last spring, and it'll just go to work and do that. You can't just go into Google Photos and say that, though. You have to be using Apple's Photos app,
Yeah.
because it's going to be processing a lot, not just on your device, but also in the cloud. And so I guess my question for you, Jon, is do these features, or are there features that you would hope to see that would entice you to switch to Apple's first party apps from what you use
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think the best use of AI is AI you don't have to think about, right? The technology rules a whole. If it fades into the background, it's part of how you use it. That's incredible. And Apple's been using AI in a lot of ways. But I still equate it to taking a picture with the Pixel, right? You look at it, you're like, that looks okay. And 4 seconds later, you're like, I'm a professional photographer. That's incredible. So I think if it fades into the background and the use case to use things like that outweigh the benefits of using something different, of course I'll switch. I don't have any allegiance to an email app. Whatever's going to give me the best experience is sort of where my heart will be. So I do think if Apple can deliver on what they're saying, it'll fade into the background and become part of how you use the app. I think Apple's biggest hurdle is to get people to actually use Siri for anything again, who aren't following this and aren't in the minutia of sort of the daily tech news, to get people to actually try Siri again. People who are sick of hearing, here's what I found on the web, or every 4 seconds. I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle. Like getting people to use Apple Maps again, right? After that first initial launch, the well was tainted for a lot of people. And that's still how people...
That's crazy, because that was 11 years ago, right?
If you ask, say, 10 people what their opinions are on Apple Maps, I don't want to speculate with number of people. There will be a few in there. I will say, not sure. It's garbage. It's crap. So fighting, and that's been 4 years. And Apple Maps has gotten really good. I'm curious to what that uptake is going to be with Siri.
Yeah, I think you're right. Also, the kind of the visual rebranding, I think, is a really deliberate choice on Apple's behalf to kind of reinvigorate that kind of Siri. I mean, I'm actually genuinely surprised that they kind of didn't really rename Siri or kind of do a little bit more. Maybe that is something that we'll see potentially at the iPhone 16 event. Who knows? Maybe there'll be kind of like a different version of it potentially. But yeah, I think you're really right. I mean, getting people to kind of change their habits is really hard after having years and years and years of an assistant that really just doesn't fulfill on the promises of what you want to do 95% of the time. Like, yeah, cool, I can set a timer, I can work out what the weather is outside, or I can just open the app and do it just as quickly with 2 taps. To get people to really go back and change how they fundamentally do things, it's a huge undertaking. And so I'm really hoping that we're going to see a little bit more of kind of an acknowledgement of that, and something that's really going to make us want to change our habits. The developer beta, I don't know if it's going to be a really good way to judge that. It's way too early. I think this is I think a bit of an uphill battle. You're really right on the money there with that one, because I know I'm not going to be using Siri voluntarily without like a big relearning curve.
Yeah. And I think Lexy's right about what the use is going to be now. The current rumor has more of a full-featured 18.1 coming sometime in October. I mean, so we're just, call it August 1st when we're filming this. I mean, we're still months away. That's a long time in the tech world. And if it's the end of October, it's what, August, almost 3 months. That's an eternity as far as how things can develop. I'm sure it was deliberate releasing it now so developers could try it, but certainly it's not meant for a consumer grade experience yet.
Right. And it won't be so the things that developers are getting today won't be in public beta until the fall. So obviously fall is kind of the iPhone time frame. So I'm imagining public beta after the releases of the new devices. I think you're right. Aside from people thinking Siri sucks, there are also people who think Siri just does what it does, right? I asked Siri to wake me up at a certain time, to set an alarm for 15 minutes. I asked it for the weather. It does those things fine, and that's pretty much all I use it for. Even those people who don't have a complaint about what Siri does, because they're kind of comfortable with what it does well and they just use it for those reasons. Even if you just stick with that, then you're missing out on what the new things are, right? So there's a relearning for the people who have a bad impression, but there's also a relearning for the people who use it just fine for the things that it can do well. So yeah, I do see the uphill battle that's in front of Apple right now.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, myself included, there's like a conflation between an assistant and AI. And there's that sort of delineation is still like, it's still very, very difficult, because I think a lot of people look at tools like Gemini, they look to tools that like now the new Siri is like, well, why doesn't it do the assistant things very well, specifically like Gemini? But it's not really supposed to be an assistant in that respect. It is like AI. It is doing many other different things. So, I mean, at least for me as well, I'm still very confused about what, you know, each of how to define each of these things, and trying to treat, I shouldn't really be treating an AI tool like an assistant, because it's kind of, it does way more than that. And so it's still super early days. I think we're still very much in that Wild West kind of frontier of no one really knows what these tools are supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be working. You know, ourselves included, myself included, at least, as somebody who's supposed to be communicating all of this and kind of working through all that. It's tough, because I think even the companies themselves don't really have this kind of clear definition of what each of these tools is supposed to be doing, and that grand vision of how they all fit in.
Yeah, there's still an aspect, for me at least, of anytime I talk to an AI or use an AI, like, I feel like I'm just rolling the dice. Like, if I'm going to ask it something, whatever the answer is going to be, I'm rolling the dice, right? So in other words, even if I ask it for a piece of information that should be simple, I always have this feeling of, okay, I asked it, here's the answer. Now I got to go double check and see if it's right, because I don't know. The reason I'm asking is because I don't know, but I also know that the AI may or may not. So how useful is something where every time it answers you, you then go Google it to see if what it told you is correct, as opposed to just Googling it for yourself? I guess that's really the major hurdle. Can you trust that you can just talk to Siri or Gemini through, let's say, a headphone, and just ask it to do something, ask it to add something to your calendar and send a message to so-and-so, inviting them to it without having to look at your phone at all? Do you trust it to do that? I don't at this point. I still feel like I need to double check and make sure everything's good.
No, but I do trust Gemini if I'm asking it questions, because it's just pulling from Google's database anyway.
That's true. That's true.
But no, I agree with you. I think it still has a ways to go. I think Lexi's point of, is it an assistant or is it AI, is very astute.
Yes.
But maybe like the users have the keys, right? Depends on how you want to use the technology. Do you want to use it as an assistant? Or do you want to use it as AI? Is it both? Is it multiple times a day, one or the other? I think that's sort of the typical proof that we're in the very infancy stages of what this is ultimately going to be. We're probably a couple generations away from phones in the cloud, right? You have a device, just a portal, and all the processing is even done locally. It's all done with AI. It's a very interesting phase that we are in right now. I don't want to call it a bubble. I think the bubble's going to be here for a while, but how the bubble gets used and how a technology gets utilized and sort of permeates consumers and then businesses is going to be really interesting to watch.
I agree. If you want to try this out,
can
an iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, or an iPad or Mac with an M1 or later chip. But let's move on to different type of automation.
Yes,
home automation.
Home automation.
John, you've been working on this.
I've been busy.
I want to hear about this. I have complaints.
Yes.
But before I put them out there, I want to hear what you've been doing.
All right. So, in our house, prior to these past few weeks, we have a Ring alarm system. We had Ring cameras. I had a Google camera outside. We have Google Home, the screens in the house. And then we had our lights were all done inside of HomeKit.
Okay.
So it was a mess.
Interesting.
I don't know what anything was. Couldn't access anything. I forgot what apps there were. My wife has many other interests, technology not chief among them, like just wanted things to work and didn't want to have to.
Fair enough.
What app is I want to see if my daughter's crying. Like, what app is the camera in? So I took everything now with sort of the new Matter protocol and brought everything into HomeKit for the time being. I can move it out very easily with Matter. And so I redid all of my things at my house to work inside of HomeKit. I love my Ring alarm. Wasn't going to change it. So super expensive and a giant pain in the butt. So I did a homebrew setup, and actually I went and I want to try to make this as easy for other people to do as possible and do a video on this. So I bought essentially a homebrew box. It's oddly named HOOBS, HOOBS.
I have one of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Connected to my network, and it brought everything directly into HomeKit and is working perfectly. So now all of my alarm system was in. I did a crazy deep dive on like a doorbell was Ring beforehand. So I went with an Aqara door lock, or doorbell rather. I went with the we have a bunch of locks in our house. I went with the Aqara U100, which is a little bit of an older lock instead of the new U200. For cameras, I bought a bunch of the Aqara G2H Pros, outdoor cameras, Logitech Circle, and now all of my home stuff is now automated inside of HomeKit. Oh, and thermostats. I had Google thermostats too.
Yep.
I should have waited though because some of the new ones got leaked today. But I have now Ecobee thermostats inside of my house, and I had a fight against Ecobee. They do this Ecobee Plus thing. If you turn it off, you can't really set a schedule. You can make it like go in a certain range. It's very weird.
Oh, right.
You would think it could be a schedule like at 7 o'clock, go to 70 degrees. It doesn't do that. So I had to use automations inside of HomeKit to override thermostat was doing. And other sort of weird things. Wow. The locks are supposed to auto lock after 3 minutes. They didn't always do it, and sometimes they did. So I had to go through inside automations to automatically lock the doors every hour. Sometimes we'll leave and the doors will blow. Moral being, it was a pain, and it took quite a bit of time to get everything integrated into.
How much time? This is what I want to hear.
I mean,
how frustrating was this to achieve?
I mean, that I never had a HomeKit doorbell beforehand, so trying to get that installed, and then it wasn't recognizing packages, and trying to figure out with HomeKit secure video was a little more not complicated. It's more time consuming than I would have expected. After that first one got in, it went relatively fast. Then trying to troubleshoot the issues took time, right? Door locks aren't working. Why not? Why can't I set the schedule on the thermostat like I'm supposed to? How do I fix that? So there's a lot of like fixing of things to get it working, which was very surprising. But looking at my HomeKit screen right now,
yes.
See all my cameras. I can see my locks. I can control them all with voice if I want to. The locks have fingerprints in there built in. We have no keys in our house, so we're a keyless house. Longer than it should have been, but definitely possible, I should say.
Wow. So
there's a lot of
just
things.
to confirm, I'm going into my home. This is my main complaint. So I do have HOOBS as well.
Yeah.
I think by the way, did you get the one that supports Matter?
I had the older one. So I just had that one here, so I just kept it. I would have, if I was starting fresh, I would have bought one that supported the HOOBS Pro.
Okay. So I'm looking at my HomeKit home right now, and I want to say probably 50 things in here.
Sure.
The vast majority of which say updating or no reply.
There's a lot of nerd.
I feel like I'm scrolling through my devices here. My cameras are just blacked out. Like so many things.
Are the cameras being brought in from HOOBS?
No, these are HomeKit native cameras.
Here's where the issue is. I had the same issue.
Okay.
So this will be a fix with iOS 18 thing. I imagine in your house, you probably have a couple HomePods, a couple Apple TVs.
Yes.
So HomeKit is automatically picking which one it wants to use as the hub.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any that are hardwired in, like an Apple TV with actually Ethernet cable plugged in. Yeah, so with iOS 18, you can pick the hub that you use, and that should fix.
Well, that's the issue.
That's the majority of the issues with HomeKit. That's something I had to troubleshoot as well. I figure just plug it in, it would work.
Okay. So I was wondering if I needed to just. I mean, you saw what I just scrolled. I was like, do I need to just delete my entire home and spend? Because I'm not going to do it. It
is really nice once you do it, though. Just saying. I mean, I could say going to bed, going upstairs, lock the doors, and everything works. Do not use any of the Homebrew or HOOBS boxes for cameras, though. It was a disaster for cameras. I really have it used just to control my alarm on or off. I had to add every sensor that's attached to the Ring system had to be brought in order for it to work, and get rid of the sort of setup accessories menu. But if you're not bringing cameras, it works great.
So tell me some of the, you said a couple of them a minute ago, but what are some of the just verbal shortcuts that you've created?
I have all lights on, eating dinner it'll pause the TV, it'll dim the lights in our dining room. My wife and I, we go upstairs, it'll turn off all the lights, but turn on the light over our staircase. I have going to bed, it'll turn off all the lights, say good morning, turns on the lights in my kitchen. I can say lock all doors, it'll lock all the doors. Things like that I found them very cool. I probably, much like AI, will use it for the first couple weeks. I'm excited and forget that I set these things up.
Now, Lexi has been
It's quiet.
very quiet, during this section.
I've seen Lexi review everything I just talked about. She's made a video on.
Yes, I have refused to install them in my own domicile. Isn't this wild though? Here's the thing, because to your point, like getting all of these devices to talk together in a way that is intuitive. I've like Matto, yes, it should have solved many of these problems, but has it yet, given, your experiences? Maybe not so much. I'm just so reluctant to go through and put in all of those hours to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
I feel like I do that so much in the day-to-day of the job that when I get home, I just sort of want to be as old school as possible and not necessarily have to deal with all of that. Yes, I have a doorbell. It's a Nest doorbell. And that's kind of it. Oh, no, the garage door now has an app. Yes, but they don't talk to each other, right?
No.
They don't talk to each other. Do I want them to talk to each other?
That's the next thing I'm trying to troubleshoot, is trying to get my garage door. It supports my Q, somehow bring that into the house.
That used to work. They canceled that, or they removed that feature.
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, it's because they want you to pay for it. That feature, instead of just having it integrated with
you still can't pay for it. Like, to have that feature come back.
Oh, it's just not there.
There's no HomeKit or Matter in it. As far as I am aware, no Matter support yet at all. But you can sort of do it with HOOBS, what I'm trying to do before I install something new. Lexi's point, though, over the span of 3 days, I was installing a new doorbell, 2 new thermostats, 4 new cameras. My wife was like, "What? Our house is a mess." It is a giant pain. Unless you're like starting from scratch, you're like moving into a new place and you want to just do it. I feel where Lexi's at as well. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't care. I'll get up and turn the thermostat on myself.
Yeah, when it can automatically, make me a coffee and I don't have to have a verbal command or pick up my phone. It just, knows it can use the bed. I've got an 8 sleep on the bed. Okay, when it knows that I'm up, everything starts to automate. That is kind of the ultimate for me. I still feel like there's too much friction to get everything to work the way I want. And I'm happy to wait. I'm happy to have a little bit more low tech, and I've got enough in the day-to-day in the office. When I get home, I'm okay with it being a little less intense to set everything up.
Andrew, what about you? Are you going to go through and do the work to kind of set things up? You probably have everything there to make things work.
I have everything. So it's an interesting question, because what Lexi was saying is kind of where I'm at, but it's like I've already done the work. And what's frustrating is I've done the work and I've spent so much time troubleshooting the work I've already done. I know what I'm doing. It's not like I'm doing it incorrectly. It's just these devices they're not staying online. They lose connection to the Wi-Fi.
They do lose connection.
And it's like, why would you put a week, like, let's take one of the robotic vacuums I reviewed recently, right? It's like, it took me an hour to get it onto the Wi-Fi, and all I was doing was get on, it's not, okay, factory reset, try again, factory reset. And I did it like 8 or 9 times, and finally it caught the Wi-Fi.
Here's the problem with all those things.
And then it lost connection again.
All these things. So
tell me.
Almost all the smart home stuff required 2.4 gigahertz connection. And almost a dedicated 2.4. So maybe your network will switch or not switch, or when it was trying to connect, it was hooking up to a 5 and it kept disconnecting until it switched to a 2.4 and got on the network. It don't work unless you want to create a separate 2.4. And then to your point earlier about cameras not working, so iOS 16, you can pick the hub, but oftentimes HomeKit will sometimes update firmware on those products. But sometimes it won't, and you have to open up the app. So like for my Aqara stuff, I got to open up the Aqara app, update the firmware from there. Then I could jump into HomeKit and do all the stuff that I want to do. I mean, there's hoops after hoops after hoops of getting these things to work. So maybe it's a firmware issue, and you got to go and find the app that you use for whatever kind of camera system you have. I think Lexi's probably the smart one here. Just get up and turn on the air.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I like the old school. There's also the discrepancy between iOS and Android. So my household is split right down the middle. You
Yeah.
know, my husband uses an Android. I obviously use both given my job,
Mhm.
but I have the iPhone set up primarily because I know a lot of the app specific experiences work better on iPhone. There is a vacuum cleaner I was testing. It was a Neato vacuum. For the life of us, we could not get it to work on Android until it was initially set up,
Yep.
got on the network with an iPhone, right? So there's just so many friction points there as well if you have a house that doesn't have one universal operating system. But it sounds like even if you are
Still doesn't
entirely
work.
on one, it still doesn't work.
Yeah. Matter was supposed to fix this. It hasn't. And so to answer your question, John, I feel like if I go through to get everything back online and fixed, and then 3 days later I'm back here, I'm gonna like throw my house in the trash. And, like,
But it makes
you know what I mean? Like,
but it makes a good point, right? If the three of us who are, you know, probably more tech savvy than most folks out there are having difficulty getting things working, how are our parents, how are people who are not in this space ever going to get things working? I spent more time than I am proud to admit on Reddit and trying to figure out what was going on, how to fix issues. People aren't going to do that. So anyway, the smart home automation stuff and the smart home is clearly not where it needs to be. But if you do get it working, which I now am very proud to have it working.
congratulations.
That's like a personal achievement. I was
Well
like, telling
done.
my wife, I'm like, look.
I'm happy.
She was like, cool.
Was she happy? Was she happy?
I think she was happy for me. I think is what it was out that I was stopped with construction in the house. I had like drills going, and she was.
Mm-hmm.
We're done for a while.
She was happy
Let's
to have
talk-
you back.
Yeah.
Let's talk fitness devices.
Yes, there's
Galaxy
a
Ring.
lot happening on the Samsung front.
Yes. So Lexi, I'm still waiting for my Galaxy Ring to arrive.
Same
I
here.
haven't gotten it in.
Oh my goodness.
So Lexi, you're the
Okay.
one.
You got it.
All right.
You're the one that needs to educate us here.
I am the one. Okay.
The case looks so cool.
This is hands down the best charging solution and case of any smart ring. I've tried a whole bunch of them, and it's just look, if there's a reason to get a smart ring, it's not for the case, but if you do get one, the Galaxy Ring is so much better than the other options. Obviously, there are many other reasons why you wouldn't get a Galaxy Ring, but I've been wearing it for basically since the launch event, and I've been really impressed with, you know, just mostly how comfortable it is. And just how much it's been able to kind of like integrate itself into like my day to day without necessarily needing to have like the bulk of a smartwatch. I obviously usually default to a smartwatch, being like a wearables sort of fitness enthusiast.
Yeah.
But the smart ring is really just like it's a nice switch almost, because there is a whole suite of people that do not want to wear a smartwatch. They probably never will wear a smartwatch, and they're just sort of curious. And how many steps am I taking? Like, how's my sleep doing? You know, it's kind of that curiosity side that this will really help kind of fill the gap for many people. And the battery life is also really, really quite good on the Galaxy Ring. There's a lot of other questions, though, that this device brings up that I think it's very much shows that it's in its infancy. Number one, it's the price, $400. It's a lot of money. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's way out of the reach of many people who are just sort of fitness, sleep curious. There's the price, obviously. There's the interoperability, Android only, and Galaxy device needed for, I guess, kind of the most helpful features, like the energy score, which is kind of taking into account, you know, the sleep and activity and things like that, which could be really helpful for some people. And there's no sleep apnea detection on the Ring. That's only on the Galaxy Watch. And I was kind of a bit bummed about that one, because I think a lot of people, you know, might have sleep apnea, or they're just genuinely curious they don't have to do like a sleep test essentially to work that out. The Ring could potentially detect that for them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do that. For $400, like I would have hoped that they brought that functionality over. Is that saying something about the accuracy of the blood oxygen sensor compared to the watch? I don't know. I'm going to do some more testing on that. But yeah, the price is really the big downside for me. I just wish they made it $300. It would have been a slam dunk for $300, you know?
Out of curiosity, when I asked you about it, you went and grabbed it, which meant you weren't wearing it.
No, I wasn't.
Is there a reason?
I tell you why. Because I'm currently switching between, I'm doing a video on the Ultra, a tips video next. I took the Ring off to charge it in here, because I'd been wearing it for, you know, 5-6 days. I needed to charge it. You can see it's like the indicator is flashing. It's kind of low on the case battery too, but that's why I took it off. And also because I was installing the next version of watchOS 11 beta on my Apple Watch. So it's the life of a tech reviewer, right? You know, it's always like you have one thing on, you have multiple things on. I always like freak out whenever I'm doing either like a Samsung or an Apple video, and I sometimes accidentally I've got both devices on, and I'm like, no. I can't show the Apple Watch in a Samsung video, and I can't show the Apple Watch in a Sam's. Like I can't.
That's one of the most relatable things I've heard for our industry. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah. You're like, I'm testing both of them. But you know you're going to get torn to shreds, so it's not worth it.
I've had one on each wrist, like different brands on each wrist for a ton of videos. Look like a chump when I go outside. Sometimes
I go out with multiple things on, and people just like side-eye me. They're like, why have you got 3 things on you? I'm like, it's the job.
Is your husband into tech?
Yes, very much so. So always like really curious about the new devices. He's a big cyclist as well. So specifically anything like cycling features, very interested in. So the Galaxy Watch Ultra, like I can just do like a little, I know most people are probably not interested in the cycling features because it's quite niche, but there is a specific feature on the Galaxy Watch 7 and Ultra cycling FTP test. And I'm going to say to Samsung again, make it on all bike types, not just the outdoor bike type. You're missing out. Who wants to do a FTP test outside? I don't. Yeah. Safety. Sorry, that's it. I'm done. I just had to get that out there again. Yeah.
Have you found, I know some people have been saying they've been seeing discrepancies between if they have the watch and the ring, that their stats will wildly different between the two, like their same stats. Just throughout the day. Have you seen or noticed anything like that?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. I'm kind of glad you brought it up because there's kind of a couple of different ways from my understanding that Samsung Health judges a lot of these things. So the Samsung Health in the background is already kind of determining like steps and activity and things like that, regardless of whether you or not you have like a wearable on you. This is my understanding. So then if you also add on, say, like a ring or a watch or something, the phone has already been calculating some of this while you have not been wearing your wearables. You put it on, and then there's potentially some like crosstalk essentially here between like the different metrics that these devices are picking up. I haven't done enough testing individually of like a really kind of controlled environment of like just testing the ring on one phone and then testing the watch on another independent phone on 2 separate like Samsung accounts, because that would be like the most, I guess, scientific way to do it on 2 very different devices. I know those people have been talking about those issues. I'm definitely going to be doing more of a deeper dive into that. But yes, there's more to this than just potentially the device not calculating correctly. It could be other settings in the background. More testing needs to be done. So I'm kind of geeky like that. You know, I'm going to do that. I'm going to set up 2-3 phones and have 3 separate tests and stuff going in the background. But yeah, I haven't found huge discrepancies in my testing so far.
And watchOS 11, have you been, it seems like the majority of like the main new features are health related. Including the new Vitals app. Have you been getting into that?
Yeah, the Vitals app is a really interesting one. So in order to calculate all this, you need to wear it to sleep. Yes. And I think that's, like, as you guys know, like probably one of the biggest challenges for people with an Apple Watch is you're either in the camp of I track my sleep, and I have been ever since whenever sleep tracking was first introduced natively, or I cannot stand wearing my watch to sleep. I need to charge it because the battery doesn't last long enough, right? So kind of the rub. It's like, how is Apple going to convince people that they need to wear this almost as long as possible overnight to get this data from the Vitals app? Because it needs multiple nights of data, and ideally you need to wear it over an extended period of time, if not all the time, so you can work out if something is deviated from your baseline or not. But so many people, I'm like, I really want to know this Vitals app. Like, this sounds really cool. I get to see, like, maybe if my skin temperature is fluctuating or things like that, like if I'm getting sick or whatever. But I can't. I charge my Apple Watch at night. What am I supposed to do? I mean, it's forcing people to change that habit is another thing. I just really hope that the next Apple Watch Series 10, Ultra 3, whatever they're going to be called, really does better on battery life, please. I'm always always going to say this. I'm never not going to want battery life. And yes, people will say, yeah, well, the Apple Watch charges really fast. It does. But communicating that to people who necessarily aren't necessarily in this day in, day out, like the habit is to charge your devices overnight.
Yeah.
Even if it only takes 30 minutes or whatever to charge enough to do sleep tracking, or 8 minutes or something. Yeah, it's that next level, getting people to change that habit, to not charge it and also want to wear a device to bed. That will be the biggest hurdle.
It's hard to wear a watch to bed. I can't wear my any watch to bed. I put my hand under my pillow, it hits and it wakes me up. It's a cumbersome device. I have sleep issues, so for me, I'm more sensitive, but it's a cumbersome thing, I think, for a lot of people to wear a watch while sleeping. That's why something like a ring is so appealing. I wear a smart ring every night and have for almost 3 years. So that's so much easier.
What about the thoughts of the rumored Apple ring? Would that sway you?
I mean, like anything, whatever's going to serve me best. I really don't have like software allegiance. See what it does. If it does exactly the same thing that a watch or my Aura or Ring-Con or Galaxy Ring doesn't, who cares?
Speaking of next big things, though, big things, future things. You want us to talk about the next big thing in mobile? I
wanted to ask Lexy a question. I'm going to put her on the spot maybe a little bit.
Please do.
We haven't seen the next large, big sea change, paradigm shift in the smartphone space in a while. 7 or 8 years ago, they tried to make 3D a thing. That was obviously very short-lived. The battery technology we have right now is essentially the same battery technology that we had 15 years ago. We're seeing processors get more efficient and more powerful, and we've seen more megapixels crammed into phones. We haven't seen that next big change in the evolution of mobile phones. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a new battery chemistry where suddenly things are lasting for days, and how we can use our devices will change because more power can be pulled from them. What do you see? I mean, you're going to these places where exoskeletons are being developed. I mean, are you seeing anything new, or any thoughts on anything new sort of in the mobile space for what's coming in the next 10 years?
I love this question because there are so many different ways that, you can take it.
Yeah.
The technologies that, as you've very rightly pointed out, have been trying to kind of reach that next big thing, whatever that next frontier, what comes after the phone, right? What is that, or what is the next thing? I think for a lot of people, they'd say AI is kind of, the defining characteristic of what that will be. It hasn't proved itself to be as amazing as all the CEOs are trying to tell us, right? Foldables was also the other huge frontier that I think it's super cool. Don't get me wrong, I love foldables. I love flip phones. I love it. Same. But is it pushing the envelope to a stage where we're going to kind of call this like the next generation? I don't know. I haven't seen that yet either. I mean, I think you're onto something with the battery technology. I love the concept of having device. I mean, there was a few years ago, I do remember seeing there was an exhibitor at CES and a company that was working on technology that was basically charging through the air, essentially. So you would walk within a realm. Yeah, you remember, right? You've seen this. That to me, I thought was a really interesting take on how our devices could become more ubiquitous without necessarily having to change I hate using the word form factor, but without changing the way that they kind of present themselves to us. Automatically all our devices would already be charged, because I still think that is the big pain point for so many people. And in order to take it to kind of the next step, is it something, it's just intuitively doing this for us in the background without necessarily needing us to kind of have that. We don't need a Qi wireless charging pad. We don't need to have a MagSafe or anything like that. It is just charging within we come home and all of our devices are automatically there. But then what is after that though? I mean, if that doesn't seem like it's kind of gone anywhere recently, but now that brings up another interesting question. I should read more into that and see whatever happened to that company.
That was a cool demonstration. They had for anybody wondering, they had a little room and they had these, and almost in like a experiment, like a Nikola Tesla experiment come to life. They had these almost like pillars set up, and devices that were enabled, you would walk in and they would start charging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next logical step is it becomes I'm not sure if this is through a wearable form factor or if it's something else that we kind of don't know about. Yeah, it's devices that are kind of almost proactively engaging with us and kind of knowing what we need next before we even know it. And I think
Yeah.
that is what AI is potentially being promised to do. I don't think that that's kind of what it's going to be able to do, at least in the next 2, 3 years, 5 years, I'm not sure. But really having a device that whatever it's going to look like, wherever we put it on our body or even not on our bodies, that is,
Yeah.
you know, it's something that we can talk to, we can interact with. I know a lot of people want that kind of, you know, her style virtual assistant, like OpenAI, kind of very conversational and fun and flirtatious, whatever it might be. I don't think I want that, but something that is kind of in the background, but also it just like lets us live in the real world a little bit more. And maybe that's kind of a bit more of a cynical take from somebody who works and covers tech so much, is like, I almost want a device that takes me back into reality as opposed to taking me out of it. And so I think that's also like one of the issues that I had with Vision Pro. And I know you guys have been really using it probably a lot more than I have. But from my perspective, it was just so, it felt like it was truly removing me from a situation rather than integrating more seamlessly and just having like something that I could kind of like set, forget, and kind of walk around with. It definitely felt like I can't move around. I can't interact with my family. I can't do anything with this device on apart from sit down. And that almost felt like it was supposed to be the opposite of what it was supposed to be giving me, that freedom. So this very long rambling answer, but that next frontier, Jon, to answer your question, I want that. It doesn't exist yet. And I don't know what it is, but what I want it to be is that ubiquitous device that is able to kind of integrate with us seamlessly, know what we need, be able to do the things that we want to do with our smartphones and all of that, but let us live more presently in the real world. That's a really weird wish list of things.
No, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you described, what it sounds like would be the dream augmented reality pair of glasses, right? It looks like a glasses. You have all your smartphone information on screen. You interact around the world with the world around you. You interact like you would sit there and mindlessly scroll on a phone, track your hand to do that scrolling for you. You can still see the world. You can still see your devices. You're still getting information. Maybe something like that is ultimately where things will going. That's kind of beyond the phone.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is beyond the phone, whether it's glasses or even the company that was working on the contact lenses that were kind of somewhat similar.
Yeah.
But I still think that just like adding something onto you is probably even too much for some people to jump on. I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with wearing a pair of smart glasses or contact lenses, but yeah, it's a great question. When you know the answer, let me know.
It's always interesting to see what that next thing is going to be, because we're just getting slightly faster rectangles. Obviously the form factors can change the foldables, but primarily slightly faster rectangles. But year over year, the change has not been noticeable.
Jon, I was going to ask you after you just mentioned it. When you were asking that question, I was wondering to myself, why is he not mentioning foldables, for example? So when you're saying next big thing, you're not just talking.
I love foldables.
Instead of having a solid thing, now it can.
I will defend foldables until I am blue in the face. But it's a different rectangle form factor. Like, it's the same information you get on a phone. You can just get more of it.
Yeah.
And now you're getting maybe 2 screens instead of 1. It's definitely an evolution of what exists right now. But I don't think, as I kind of once said, that it's the next new thing. I hope it continues and matures and gets better. I think foldables are incredible. But it's not that hugely new thing.
Obviously, there's the rumor and it's not confirmation from Apple, but the information reported that Apple is now working on a fold, like moving forward on it. But there's also the rumor that before we see that Apple's next big major thing is to make the iPhone even slimmer. So the top of the line, most expensive iPhone, even more expensive than the Pro Max, is going to be, we don't know what's going to be called, but let's say an iPhone Slim or an iPhone Air.
Yep.
Do you feel like that's just nothing? Like, do you see any benefit to, okay, it doesn't fold, but it's your same iPhone that is now, it weighs half as much as it did, and it's half as thin as it was.
I mean, again, that's a cool way to do a rectangle again, right? Like, I don't want to take away from how cool it is. But it's just a cool way to do a rectangle again.
But it's not something that draws you.
It totally would. As somebody who loves technology, I think it's awesome. But it's not like a next new thing. I'm thinking like 10, 15 years down the road. This is a really cool thing for right now, though. How long battery life is obviously going to be the big question there.
Right. What about you, Lexi? Does that excite you at all? Next year's iPhone, your choice between a standard 17 Pro, 17 Pro Max, or a slim one that just weighs a little less and isn't as thick.
I mean, yeah, again, to John's point, it's another rectangle, and does it fit better in my pocket? Does it improve my life in any way, shape, or form? More so than the rectangles that we already have. If it can say yes to that question, then I'm all in. Until they can prove to me that I need a, slimmer, lighter, single camera device, it feels just like iterating on stuff that we've already got.
Yeah.
And I'll have to wait and see before I deliver my final judgment. But I'm skeptical. Let's put it that way.
Interesting. It's interesting. I'm someone that would naturally get FOMO if there is a slim iPhone, but it only has one camera when the Pro Max is going to have 3. And it's also interesting that, the MacBook Air was such an iconic device. That first MacBook Air, when it was pulled out of the envelope, right? It was so much thinner than the other computers. I don't know that phones are so thick that something thinner is going to be as impactful as a MacBook Air was when compared to a MacBook Pro or a MacBook back then at the time.
Absolutely.
Lexi, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Lexi,
making the
thank
time.
you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you for your patience. This was awesome.
Yes.
And you lived up to the hype of our intro.
Here it is.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you for having
Yes, you
me.
did,
It was a pleasure.
And that is it for this edition of Geared Up. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can catch John and I on YouTube. I'm at youtube.com/gearlive, and John is at youtube.com/John4Lakers. Feel free to head over and subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on all the latest tech. Speaking of subscribing, you can subscribe to Geared Up in your favorite podcast app if you haven't done so already. Just search Geared Up, that's 2 words, not one, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, or really wherever you choose to listen. If you like what we do, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show. Geared Up is a Gear Live podcast, and you can see more from us at gearlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. For John Rettinger, I'm Andrew Edwards, and we'll catch you in the next episode.